We're going to spend most of the first hour with the guys from Madden Media talking tourism and destination marketing and workforce attraction, and how those two are actually more linked than you might know. Madden Media is a real success story, I would say, in Tucson that Tucson can really be proud of. And this is we have Dan Janes in, and he's been on this station before, but the first time on our show. And he leads the crew over there, so I'm excited to have everybody here in studio. And then the 11 o'clock hour will be our What If Hour, where we talk about big ideas for Tucson's biggest challenges. It's a weekly hour. We always have a good time, and the phone lines are open for that hour and for this hour. If you have questions about what we're going to talk about, or you have comments or thoughts and want to chime into the conversation, that's why we do local radio, because it's real-time interaction. 790-2040 is your live line front door key into that conversation. So let's go ahead and go around the table. We have our newest Tucsonan. Let's go ahead and introduce each other individually. Then I'll have Dan Janes give a little intro into what Madden Media is and does, and we'll go from there. So Jeff, welcome to Tucson, man.
Cool. Good morning, everybody. My name's Jeff Burghardt, and of Burghardt Dore Advertising, originally based in Monterey, California. My business partner, Nicole Dore, and I recently merged with Madden Media, and we'll talk more about that, but also dove all the way in and relocated here to Tucson 6 days ago, getting our life in order, living in Midtown and digging it.
Yes. So we were joking before we got in the studio that was the acid test, as Jeff put it, that if you can move here and love it in the heat of summer, June and July, then you made it. You're good to go, because the rest of the year between monsoons and fall and spring is beautiful, and Tucson's a great place to be. So if you can move from where you moved, where it was cool and a little rainy, to here where it's hot and hopefully soon to be rainy, then you're good to go. We're glad to have you. Welcome to Tucson.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome, Zach. Thanks so much for having us. It's great to be here, and really appreciate all the work that you're doing with the show and just celebrating Tucson and celebrating how we grow and continue to evolve as a community. It's just humbling and a privilege to be the CEO of Madden Media, which is a 35-year young company, and I think it's actually kicking around 37 years. And great to have great people like Jeff and Nicole's team join us in the community as well as part of the company. For those of you that don't know about Madden Media, we are a 100-person company roughly that does destination marketing and is a marketing agency for communities across the country, where we really focus on how do we grow travel and tourism for communities, and then how do we grow the workforce across the communities.
Wonderful. Dan Janes, CEO of Mad Media, thanks for being here. Appreciate the work that you guys do as well. So, long time in coming, this kind of first time on the show, but it won't be the last. I certainly hope so. So, all right, we'll put the troublemaker in the corner.
Literally.
So, you'll recognize this voice, Tucson, but I'm having him in studio for the first time today. So, this is a real pleasure. Louis, how you doing, man?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me back on.
So, yeah, can you give us a little sneak peek into what you do with Mad Media and what you work on?
So I'm a content strategist. So I lead a team that puts together the stories that make Madden's marketing really pop, really stand out. We're not putting together boring listicles and here's what you should do, step 1, 2, 3. We're putting together stories and interactive websites that really pull our visitors in to try and sell, be it visit Tucson or visit Tampa Bay.
Very cool. So let's circle back to Dan and Jeff and kind of talk about the collaborative partnership that is now going on fully within Madden, and I'll let you point to each other and figure out who starts there. But I'm curious to dive into this a little bit more in the context of destination marketing.
Well, I guess I might kick it off a little bit, but 5-6 years ago, Madden became a client of Jeff's and their agency, working for Visit Carmel and Visit Go Lake Havasu as well. So we've known each other for a while as organizations, and came on about a year ago as we looked at what our offerings are and what we needed to do as an agency. And I looked at what Jeff and Nicole were doing, and I'm like, I want to do more things like that. So it started a conversation, and maybe Jeff, what was your perspective from your side?
Yeah, 6 years ago, our small agency, keeping up with the digital space was really challenging, and so we identified Madden as the team to work with, and so we started that collaboration 6 years ago, and then bring it to today. And as Dan suggested, the fit was there. We had certain services and skill sets that they didn't have, and vice versa. So in order to work at a more national level, it was in our best interest to do that. We were able to bring on our clients, Visit Carmel and Go Lake Havasu and a few others. And so everybody's really happy. We're able to now work at a broader level and provide greater service to our existing clients and also new clients.
Yeah, I think you're actually flying out of Tucson International to Florida as well next week. So
yeah.
Excited to see you really start getting out into the rest of the country as we promote and grow more income coming into Tucson, of course.
That's amazing. So a couple of things there. Destination marketing. You are a young Tucson company. But your work doesn't just focus on Tucson, clearly. Yeah, that, as I understand it, you help other cities, other passionate communities basically market themselves as a destination and a tourist spot. I'm curious to kind of get your thoughts and then get Louis in on this of what are some things you're seeing, what are some best practices as you're looking at other parts of the community or the nation really, and then what are some differences between those places and Tucson? That's a layered question. We don't have to get to it all at once, but that's kind of where my head's at. I'm curious.
Well, that's what I'd like to call the $2 billion question for Tucson. And the reality
that's a very
is,
specific number.
It is, because that's the impact that tourism has in Pima County, and that it has for tourism for Visit Tucson, and what Visit Tucson helps to encourage, and the 26,000 jobs that are related to tourism and hospitality that are supported by those visitors coming into our community. So it does matter very closely to this community, but taking a step back of what's it like around the rest of the country. We work very closely with about 85 destinations across the country.
Wow.
And then we work with, partners that, about 2,000 other clients in cooperative marketing programs, and, how we bring a group of people together to make an impact for those communities. So we have seen a lot, and we've seen a lot work well. We've seen a lot not work well. And one of the great things about us as an agency and seeing that is we've been able to test and apply those sort of marketing approaches and tactics to see, it doesn't really work to talk about demographics and targeting all millennials because they happen to be 21 to 45 or the ages and being born in certain years, or does it make more sense to communicate to them at an intent and an emotional level, inspiring curiosity and telling good stories. And we've seen those be the things that have been really helpful in communities and driving increased incremental visitation and ultimately turning, some of those visitors into full-time residents.
I have it'll be really fun. I mean, because just full disclosure, people can see us now, which is great. But also
no hiding.
But also listening is Louis and I kind of just hang out and talk Tucson as friends, and we text back and forth and things like that. Just really appreciate some of kind of what he sees, from around the country. What are maybe we can start with Louis and come back. What are maybe one or two things that you've seen another community market itself as a destination that you've gone, man, why aren't we doing that in Tucson? What if we did that in Tucson?
Yeah, I would say it's, we work with a lot of clients, and even just within my one team of 3 or 4 teams that we have, there's a lot of ways to do it, and there's a lot of ways to do it well. I would say Visit Tampa is doing a really, really good job of really showcasing just how many different ways there are to visit the destination. You can go the high-end route, you can go the low-end budget route. You can show up and rent a luxury vehicle, or you can show up and do it, by the streetcar they have and the little boat taxis. Not that Tucson should put that on the Santa Cruz River.
That may not. It'll need to be more than a ribbon for that to.
Yeah, and so it's
work.
with how easy it is to target very specific demographics on social media, the idea of just telling one story and that being like, hey, this is who we are and that's it, is a bit backwards. It's a little, it's archaic. And so we're even looking into ways where we can change the cover of our visit guides based on the type of places that we're sending that to
make
make
sure
sure
you were talking about.
exactly. So targeting those people, those people. So with Tucson, we have the extreme outdoor people, the ones that want to do the rock climbing. Like my wife's cousin, we were just talking to him this past weekend about coming out and doing rock climbing on Windy Point and all that. That does not resonate with his dad. You know, he wants to go on a smooth, easy hike. And so if we can tell both of those stories well, and then kick it over to our DMS team to target for that person, that's what Tucson should be doing. We're not a one-story town. We're whatever story we need to tell to get people here, and we have the place to send them.
Great segue. Thank you, Louis, for reading my notes. I was telling Dan James, CEO of Madden Media, that this is so often a conversation that kind of grows and goes organically. So we start with kind of a skeleton of notes here, and we just kind of go for it. So, but I wanted to ask Dan and then get Jeff's view on this. Here, in my mind, for the last 100 years in Tucson, we've struggled with our brand identity. We've struggled to figure out what it is, who owns it, who contributes to it, and what we look like from the outside. The example I always like to go back to is the Chamber of Commerce logo back in the 50s was fields and a pastoral guy in the fields, and where the seas, copper and cattle, and it was so like natural resource and animals and things like that, which is fine. At the same time, there was also messaging out of the Chamber of Commerce in the city. We're a zone for science. We're zoned for tech. We can be this next tech hub. And you're just kind of left there going, well, which one is it? And if it's more than one story, how do we tie it all together? So my question for Dan, it's a little macro, is what do you perceive to be, as at least a destination, Tucson's brand identity? And then I want to ask the new guy, 6 days into Tucson, what does Tucson mean to you? Because we get lost in the weeds, but you're new enough that you kind of have those eyes wide open and know what you're looking at, maybe better than we do. So let's start maybe with Dan and then go to Jeff and see where that takes us.
Yeah, so I guess when I think about brand ownership and brand ownership for communities, nobody owns the brand, because once you own a brand, then now it's a target and now it's competitive and now it's not shared, right? So as we think about building a brand and establishing that brand for Tucson, we're really talking about one master brand and then these mini brands that sit underneath of it. I think of different appliance companies that have been, you have GE appliances and then you have other brands under that. Tucson is a master brand, but then we have a consumer brand and we have a business brand, and the two are speaking to two different messages of what we have. So when I think about Tucson and who we are, I'm going to actually look to the Visit Tucson master plan work that they did, and some great work and great interviews and stakeholder interviews. So instead of my opinion, I'll try to steal some of the opinion that they've already curated, but they've identified us as seekers and explorers as who's visiting here. And as I think about seekers and explorers, it really seems that that's very similar to most of the people here. But I might also add a little bit of nerd as well. And I'm say that because there is this seeker and explorer piece that gets us outdoors and that gets us out into the community. But if you look across our industries, with the university being one of the larger employers, when you look at Raytheon being a major employer, Optics Valley, all of these big science areas are seeking something else. They're exploring something that is larger than just their job and coming to work every day. So I do think that really captures a lot of the brand of who the consumers are. When we think about the business side wants to see more of that science. They want to see more of the innovation, and we need to be able to pair that seeking and exploring to that innovation side for business. That's my 2 cents on where Tucson is as a brand right now.
Man, that's good. And do you try to incorporate that into, do you find yourself kind of talking about the nerdy side as when you talk about Tucson as a destination, or do you rely more on the seeker explorer?
We're trying, as we look at our Tucson Guide publication, some of our things that we're writing about, we're trying to pull a little bit more of that in. You see the success that places like Cobra Arcade have had, and you see a lot of these pop culture sort of engagements that are there. You can tell there's very strong thread that you can pull on there that ties to people that are interested in thinking about what's next. And as I think about what's next for what we're writing about and what we're talking about for working in Tucson, we want to see that not that there's great startups and the next best startup here. We want to see that there's a startup ecosystem here, so people see that there's the potential for innovation, that there's the potential for anything. While as an investor, I want to see startups all day long, I do want to see that there's potential for new opportunity. And, if I think about a 25-year-old or, 35-year-old moving to Tucson, they want to see that the job that they have, there's not just one option, there's multiple options that exist inside of Tucson.
I love that. I think we've been communicating that in parallel meetings or groups, Dan, because I've been saying that more and more. Is I think Tucson gets hung up. We're not there yet. We haven't done it yet. We don't have a unicorn yet. So we're not going to talk about it until it happens. And I've been saying, no, we need to sell the potential. We need to sell what's kind of a bubbling foundation, because that is more engaging than I think a lot of communities realize. And so we need to own that we're not there yet. In fact, we need to own the opposite, that our potential is there, that the ecosystem is developing. And if you want to be a part of that story, Tucson's a great place to be.
Yeah.
So I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah, taking it a step farther, when you think about people in their jobs, like there's a number of surveys and stats that say 85% of people, more than 8 out of 10 people, hate their jobs.
It's an epidemic right now.
Right? So why do they want to do something else? They want the opportunity to be able to do something else. So showing them that option, that there is the potential to do something else, is so important for a community and growing a successful workforce, because they want to be in the place that they're in more than they want to be in their job.
I love it. I had Fletcher McCusker where Jeff is a couple months ago, and I said, Fletcher, I got this idea for Tucson brand. You got to help me. And now I'm going to say it, and you guys got to help me too. Tucson, your big idea lives here. I think that's an amazing brand for Tucson. And if you're 50, 60 and you lived a great life and you've had a great profession, and your big idea is to retire and enjoy our outdoors, your big idea lives here. If you're a 20 or 30 something, burn out of your first or second or third job, and you want to do a startup, your big idea lives here. I don't know.
Especially with that new incubator coming into Oro Valley for biotech and all that. I mean, that's going to be a big thing for sure.
We got co-working spaces opening up left and right now at a way slower rate than any other community. I mean, we are pretty behind on that. But we have incubators, we have VC funds opening up. It's starting to kind of bubble. Before this segment gets away from us, Jeff, I want to keep my promise. And as a almost week-long Tucsonan, when you entered the city, when you were looking for a home, when you were making the decision to dive all in and move here, what about Tucson spoke to you in terms of identity or brand or DNA? What strikes you about Tucson?
Aside from the great climate and the outdoors and the exploring, I think that's phenomenal. But there's a creative energy here that's pretty palpable. And the fact that you're in the evolution, I mean, what better place to come while it's evolving?
Amen, brother.
Why fit the mold? Why go where it's been done? I think that's where you guys are talking about, and that's real. And I think the other neat part for us, coming from California, is there's just a friendliness, and be it the Midwest influence over the many, many years or what have you, we really feel that, and people are, neighbors coming to us and that kind of thing. So not being used to that, but I'd say the creative energy is there. And then, looking at the wellness side of this town, the wellness industry into itself is growing at a pretty high level, and is something over and above the branding side of it. But I would say that that was attractive to us when we knew Canyon Ranch was here, and there's a whole nother world that you can check out.
Very cool. I love it. This is what we need to be. This is what we need to be talking about. I think the big idea of this conversation is to link two things that don't often get linked, and that's destination marketing and talent attraction. Before we pivot there, because that's what's going to take up our next segment, before we go to break, anything on your guys' notes? Maybe I'll pick on Dan and Louie here from Madden Media before we go. Anything else about Tucson's destination marketing that you want to mention? And if we left it out, it would be an incomplete conversation before we go to a break. Anything that we missed?
Well, I think one of the things I'd like everybody in every household to do right now is go to their bank account and take out $500 and give it to the city of Tucson. Because if you do that, that's the amount of money that Visit Tucson and the visitor economy is saving you every year right now in taxes that you would otherwise pay if it wasn't for visitors offsetting that tax and offsetting that amount. So, go ahead, keep that $500, get it in savings or put it in investing in, working with the local, restaurant or shop as you look at, how you spend it, and, very excited to, showcase that as great economic impact that every household has from Visit Tucson's work.
Not to get too far into the weeds, are we talking the bed tax? Are we? What are the logistics? It's a great picture. I just want to flesh it out.
It is a mixture. It's one of these economic impact models that does get a little fuzzy, but as I understand it, it is the sales tax plus the bed tax, and I'm sure there's some multipliers or something in there, but I'll defer to Brent and his team there for the actual numbers, and you should definitely have them out on your show if you haven't yet.
Perfect. Yeah, Marisol from Visit Tucson's been like, you got to get Felipe on. You got to get Felipe on. So like,
definitely have Felipe.
Yes.
On. He is amazing.
Yeah, he's great.
So Marisol or
guy.
Felipe, if you're listening, this is the call to action. Anything real quickly before we head off?
Yeah, I would just say that one of the things that we keep running into, obviously millennial is a target for tourism attraction and all that, but as we pivot into workforce attraction as well, we are now, I say that as a millennial, we are now the largest percentage of the workforce, 35%. We beat out Gen Xers by about 2% right now. And so we, as hard as to think about that age group, because sometimes that name gets attached to less than ideal work ethic, that is what's driving the economy right now is millennials in the workforce. And so we need to ask, and seriously ask, not just come up with cute ideas of what actually attracting millennials look like. People always come up with trendy restaurants, parks and craft beer and all that type of thing, but really at the end of the day, these are 23 to I think 36-year-olds. You're on your second kid, I'm about to have my first. These are families, these are growing families, and so what a growing family, someone who's going to work, want to see out of their city, and can Tucson step up to the plate and market to those people better than Scottsdale?
So good. Well, let's use that to spin away to our first break. When we come back, that's where we're going to go, is how do we go from great destination marketing, right? How do we go from really marketing the best of Tucson to seeing that as a tool to attract the workforce that you're talking about, Louis? That's where we want to go in the second segment when we come back from a break. Let's go visit some of our sponsors that make this dream work every day. You're on 1030 The Voice, trusted local news and talk with the team from Madden Media. We'll keep talking Tucson and more on the other side. Don't go away. Tucson, welcome back to the show. This Tuesday edition of the Creative City Show with me, your host, Zach Yenser. We are with a team from Madden Media. You guys have about 100 employees now. You were telling me, Dan Janes, CEO of Madden Media. We have 3 of the team here, and congrats to Jeff on the collaboration, on moving here to Tucson, and welcome. We're excited to have you here.
Thank you.
So we're with Louis, we're with Dan, we're with Jeff here from Madden Media. We want to keep the conversation going, because if we let ourselves go, we could be here for probably 2 hours. But I promise to at least start nice with these guys, and then we might get going more and more and more and more and more. But I said 10:40, so let's try to get there. But what we want to pivot to is, we spent the first segment talking about Madden's work, not just with Tucson, but with other communities around the country as clients, on destination marketing. How do you market your home, your place, as a destination? In this case, we also got into how do we talk about and market Tucson as a community. And then Madden Media, I think, this is at least my perception, is really leading the way, along with a couple other organizations in town, on connecting the dots between how do you market yourself as a destination and what does that mean for workforce attraction. And Louis kind of set us up for that at the end of the first segment before we just went to break, with often the same people that are coming to visit Tucson may, after the next visit or the visit after that, may call Tucson home. And so how do we think about destination marketing as that pipeline and what does that mean for workforce attraction? So maybe I'll start with Dan, just to kind of set that up, and then I know this is really right up everybody's wheelhouse, so we'll make sure we go around the table, but connect the dots for us between destination marketing and workforce attraction.
Well, let me just take a step back from that and talk about where workforce attraction sits when you think about a community's overall health of a workforce, right? So you have the workforce that exists, and you need the ability to retain that workforce. So that's a core part of what every community needs to do. And then you have workforce development, ensuring that we have a workforce that is prepared to support the existing businesses and new businesses and organizations that come into the community from our K-12 system and from the university and the community college folks as they graduate and go into those roles. So those two things are two different pillars of a three-legged stool. And the last one is workforce attraction, and that's getting the new people, new population into a community. And when I think about workforce attraction, there's some really good statistics that say 90+% of people never moved to a place without visiting it first. And they never became interested in a place without visiting it first. And as we look at, that process and that workflow, when I'm thinking about, I'm one of those 85% of people that hate my job and are looking for something else. And I find out that 30% of Google traffic is literally people searching for something else to do or something around their job, usually thinking about where to go next. And it's why Google started the jobs to be able to find new jobs. But what's interesting there is Google has this way of saying, I want to give you the answer that gets you to click the soonest, which means that they're going to give you a local answer from wherever you're searching from. So if you're a community that wants to showcase your opportunities that are in nursing or healthcare or tech that are out there, you need to do something else other than just be nursing, healthcare, and tech, because those jobs are everywhere. They're in every community. The same way that you have craft beer in every community, you have those same type of jobs. And when people think about the job, they don't think about what's life like every day in that spot. They think about what are the people like? What do they, the cultures of those communities like? And how do I spend the rest of the time? Because especially millennials who do get a bad rap, and I generalize this, they're great workers. And we have great creative people in our company that are millennials, and I've seen it across communities. They are hardworking, and they are changing things. But when you think about what do they look for? Work is a means to their weekend. And that means they want to be in a place where their weekends are great and that they can explore those. So matching that destination marketing component with, there's great opportunities and great jobs here says, hey, I could not just visit here. I could actually make this a place that I want to live. And if it's a great place that they want to live, then, if you show them great opportunities, it's a great place to work.
Super. Dan Janes, CEO of Madden Media. We're with Dan Janes, Jeff Burghardt, and Louis Christensen. Louis, you've actually put some words on paper that have been made it in some local publications about this, and a lot of research that I know you've been working on related to this connection between destination marketing and workforce attraction. Can you add anything to kind of the overview that Dan gave us just now? Any specifics or numbers, or just kind of go into it a little bit?
I would say just to start with just literally the beginning of bridging the gap between tourism marketing and workforce attraction is, I think the words that you're talking about is productive, what did I call it? Productive tourism, where we're not just getting people into town as quickly we can to El Conquistador or La Paloma, we're getting them into town and then showing them the local spots to check out. And that might scare some locals because their table might get filled on a Friday night, 7 p.m. But that's why people move to a place. When I visit locations and I go to where the locals go, I feel the heartbeat of the city. And so if we can really take a step forward in that way of showing how easy it is to live in Tucson and what the locals really do when they're actually living here, that's a big step. I did see a stat from CBRE, the real estate company, and they found that only 21% of people, employees, would move further away if it meant they were working in a better work environment. which it's a weird stat and I had to kind of like sit
Yeah.
on it and think about it for a moment. But what that really tells me is people don't want to drive that far. They want to live somewhere close to their work. They want to have that kind of, not a bubble, but they want to live within a community, because that's really what's kind of fallen by the wayside, especially a lot of us millennials, as we all got sucked into the video games and TV screens. We stopped playing in forts with our neighbors. And so we kind of, I think, are recraving that as we grow older and kind of start taking more control of our life. And I think that if we as Tucson can see that, and as great as downtown, coming back into the swing of things, we need that next step out. And I know we keep trying to come up with the right word for what that is, but that, like, the old suburbs, the midtown areas, the exurbs, or whatever. Well, yeah, we need
the hinterlands.
Hinterland. Let's go with hinterlands. We need that to really come into play as well, and we need our offices and our work environment. So something that I love about Madden is we do support our local businesses. When we hire out for lunches and dinners, it's the local lunch spots, it's the barrio, it's all that type of stuff to really weave that back in. And that means a lot more to me as a millennial who really cherishes the culture of a city more than just some crazy party at the W like I had at Yelp. So it definitely goes a long way. So how can our businesses really start supporting each other and that type of a thing as well?
Right. So I think one of the main points that you were fleshing out is to really create a destination experience that replicates what a real life everyday experience could look like. I'm trying to figure out what this would look like on the ground.
I think a big part of it is not being afraid to send our visitors to local spots.
Is there a fear of that? That's interesting.
That's actually a big thing in different communities across the country.
Really?
They're concerned about over-tourism, and they're concerned about people clogging up national parks. They're concerned about people taking the restaurants and places being busy. But frankly, if places weren't busy, they wouldn't have those new businesses. They wouldn't have those new areas to try, because they didn't have the visitors that were bringing those millions of dollars in spending into those restaurants that were helping to make them successful. And you'd see even more closures for restaurants and those local, especially the independent places. So as we think about what it's like to be in a community, we want that to feel like what it's like to live there and explore and to see what's there. It's not that everybody's going to go up to Mount Lemon every weekend, but you're going to feel like they're going up there on 4th of July weekend, for sure.
Interesting. I want to get Jeff in on
just
this.
to jump in,
please.
just looking at it from a brand marketing perspective, destination marketing, without question, in a nutshell, showcases the destination for the traveler. It's really the same as you would want for attracting either businesses to relocate or staff to relocate, an individual to choose to live here for lifestyle purposes. So to me, the branding campaign for tourism is relatively similar, and in many, many cases, economic development is right underneath the tourism portion. So when you talk about sort of a sub-brand, the economic development campaign would be using some shared assets and that sort of thing. Some of the messaging, of course, will be similar, but pointed toward bringing in that workforce. And people are hungry for new places that are a lower cost of living, a beautiful lifestyle and climate. So much like a traveler looking for that, I feel that from a brand marketing perspective, getting into that branding process and working through all the different messaging that's going on, every destination tends to have that. There's the chamber, there's the different organizations, there's a lot of challenges there. And that can get just a political thing can come out of that. But if we really commit from a Visit Tucson standpoint and commit to a branding process that dovetails the tourism into something that's on brand, then it's just execution oriented. And now we get into modifying that campaign year over year and having metrics to measure just the same as tourism, measure greater staff.
And one of the things that we're doing with
cool.
Tucson Guide, we're really working on ramping that part of it up, where it's not just the vacation side. It's what does it look like to work here, and we can target that to, like Jeff said, to people who are thinking about moving their business here, be it for 30 people or an entrepreneur or a larger company. We always forget there's a real person behind every business decision. They don't throw things into a computer and AI spit it out yet. It's a Susan, it's a Jeff, it's a Nicole, it's someone who is going, you know what, I think Tucson is going to be good for us, or and so we need to really remember that, and that's why we tell stories, is because it's always a person reading them.
It's an interesting point, and this is maybe where we kind of close in on the end. Is I go back to this study quite frequently, but Politico magazine researched. They surveyed 50 mayors from around the country, and these are mayors that said we put attracting this younger workforce in our either top 5 or top 10. Some cities are even creating whole departments within cities just to focus on attracting a millennial workforce 22 to 40, which is, I think, a little over the top, but it's happening. So they said, okay, Mayor ABC, what's the one thing that you promote the most about your city, right? What's the one thing that when you look a millennial in the eye, you say, this is what we got? And majority of the mayors said are arts and culture, right? These things. They said, okay, well, what's the actual barrier to getting millennials to come and to stay? Well, the barrier wasn't arts and culture. In fact, that was the lowest one. The barrier was housing and jobs and transportation. So you've been able to, as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, be a part of some research where you basically ask both those who are coming here for the first or second time and those who live here, what do you love the most about Tucson, and what are the things that drive you the craziest? And I think it's, if we're at liberty to go into that, I think it's a really interesting story that Tucson needs to hear over and over again. Is that something that we can close on? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I was a part of this conversation. So do you want to close on it now, or are we going to break, or what do you think?
Well, that's how much time do you guys, do we want to go to the end of the hour, or we want to fit this in and end? We're doing a time check here on the Creative City Show. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay.
CEO says we're good.
Okay. So there is a boss of this conversation. It's not me and it's not Louie. It's it's Dan and Jeff. Well, let's go to a break then. Thanks, Louie, for keeping my time. John, thank you, our producer. Let's go to a break, and when we come back, we'll end our hour. I appreciate your guys' generosity of time with that very answer to that question. What makes tourists and Tucsonans really happy about our place, and what drives us nuts? And what does that mean to tie this conversation together of destination marketing and workforce attraction? You're on 1030 The Voice. We'll be right back. Tucson, welcome back to a surprise part 3 of our conversation with the team in studio today from Madden Media. We have Louie, we have Dan, we have Jeff, talking about destination marketing, workforce attraction, and the connection between the two. Really two dots that don't get connected sometimes as explicitly as really the initiatives and projects that you get to be a part of. So it's a good conversation to have with you guys in the studio. Segment 1 was about destination marketing. Section 2 was connecting it to talent attraction. And one of the things that Louie brought up early in the second segment is that and some communities struggle with this, as I think Dan and Jeff talked about, where there's this concern, well, we're going to have this part of the city that is going to be available to tourists. They don't say that. That's not on the front page of the city. But they'll say, we want to preserve our local spots just for locals and have kind of this effective quarter of the city for tourists. And one of the ways that you turn visitors into long-term residents, and by long-term residents, we also mean new workforce, new members of the economy, people who are growing the population. Population growth creates state-shared revenue, so on and so forth, is to really craft and communicate an experience that mirrors what an everyday experience would look like. Louie, you were a part of some research that was done in the city over the last year or so. It's now public. We can talk about it. That really highlights what experience that tourists are having, and then also residents. Residents were also surveyed and said, what do you love about Tucson? And what are the things that drive you a little batty about the city? really interesting results, and I love how you explain it, and I want you to do it again.
Sure.
This is an encore.
An encore.
An encore performance.
So, like you said, they asked these two groups. So these are two separate groups, and they should have very different answers, you would think.
Okay.
What you love about a place and you live, and what you like about a place that you...
residents.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they were pretty much the exact same. The order was a little shifted around, but essentially the things that residents and tourists love about Tucson are innate things that we already have. Our climate, our nature, our proximity to the mountain was actually one of the big ones, which is different than kind of the wellness feature of it. And that's what people love about Tucson and why they keep coming back. The things that they dislike about Tucson were pretty much the exact same, ironically. So it was the roads, it was the crime, it was the kind of the health of the place, the well-being, and then with homelessness kind of tied into that, and the poverty. And that's something that in Tucson, when you do drive through a lot of the surface streets, you do see what you perceive as poverty quite often. And I had a little bit of an awakening. A little side note here. I drove by this one house, and I always think, I really wish that person cared enough to take care of their lawn. And then I saw the old lady who owned the place come out with her walker, and I felt really bad. We have an aging community, and we have neighborhoods that do need some extra love in. And so when it comes to how does tourism and workforce development and traction fit into that, it's what are we actually focusing our energy on? And if we keep spinning our wheels and trying to improve our nature and all those things, those are things that we're really, really good at, that people are telling us, hey, we already love it. Check the box. I want to see not luxury, but that next step up. I want to have places where I can really visit and really show off. And we obviously need to fix the crime and homeless issue with some really practical things. And so I would love to see us as a city take a big step forward and say, okay, we know we're killing it on this side, so let's just take a step back on that. Let's focus on the things that we need to improve on and actually show some tough love. And I know we talk about that all the time, is tough love goes a heck of a lot further than just blind ignorance, for sure.
It's interesting. Quick statistic that will make us all, the popular kids at the next party we go to. And then I want to pivot to Jeff and Dan to start closing us out, because on this topic, and Jeff brought it up, is that often economic development and tourism are really linked together. And Dan, you have some interesting thoughts on how that relates to brand identity ownership. I think it's really important that we go there. But 75% of Tucson's commuter traffic happens at signaled roadways, not on freeways, not on highways, for obvious reasons.
Like it, yeah.
We don't, well, statistically, I mean, this is TDOT statistics. This is unique. Most communities are 50-50. So if you go to a Houston, if you go to an Austin, if you go to, mid-sized to large-sized city, it's half and half. 75% of our traffic happens on surface streets. So I think to a large degree, this research reflects the fact that when non-Tucsonans come to Tucson and visit, they're automatically getting a pretty raw and authentic view automatically of the city. And some of that's awesome. And other parts, it's like, we don't have much of a choice, right? Mm-hmm. Most of the traffic is happening in these areas you talk about. So they're going to feel the roads that are both improving and that are not. Mm-hmm. They're going to see the different levels of living. You can't just get on a outer highway belt and get where you need to go in the 3 days that you're in Tucson. When you come to Tucson, you see Tucson for all of its grittiness and all of its opportunity.
Yeah, and that's a big piece for sure, the opportunity side.
You can tell the drum that Louis likes to beat.
Hard.
Let's close out because we've got about 5 minutes and it's coming in fast. Jeff, you mentioned, I forget how you said it, kind of that tourism is kind of a subheader of economic development strategy. At least you've seen that in communities. Can you talk about that a little bit more? And then we'll close with Dan James, CEO of Madden Media, talking about that concept you brought up about who gets to own that brand and why that may not be the right conversation.
Yeah, and destination marketing, showcases the destination for visitors. It's really a sub-brand to draw economic development, and you can use a lot of the same assets, change the messaging, and of course the media buys and that sort of thing would be different if indeed there was a commitment to getting behind this from a campaign standpoint. And it really is an easy process once the branding and the team is together on the tourism side of it, to then create an economic development campaign that's a subset of the tourism. is an exciting process, because you can
Interesting.
really then start to put that messaging out there through media, creating a voice and creating an attraction of this creative energy, the evolution of a place to come and stake your new direction in life, be it a business relocating or an individual. So to me, the nuts and bolts are there. It's just a matter of piecing it together and then creating that brand campaign and then committing to it. Really is what it comes down to. A lot of times, a lot of talk, and really getting down to launching a campaign and then evolving it and optimizing it for the success that you've established with metrics and so forth.
Man, I love how you explain that. It makes sense. It makes sense. Dan, how would you assess our Tucson landscape currently within the model that Jeff just threw out there, and who gets to be a part of that conversation in your mind?
Well, I think everybody can be a part of that conversation. We should look to our institutions to be the ones that generally lead those organizations. And when we think about consumers, the best consumer marketers that understand how to get a brand to a consumer organization is Visit Tucson. So, I do think that Visit Tucson should be the lead for attracting workforce that is out there over, our economic development organizations or even the chamber. They know how to talk to businesses. And when you think about B2B or business to business organizations versus organizations that go business to consumer, Visit Tucson is one of those business to consumer organizations. And the economic development story, how people buy and what people think about when they're moving a company, is a different message and a different brand than what Visit Tucson has and what the destination marketing organizations have. That's why they should be consumer led. But taking this a step on the economic development side, if you look at 65% of CEOs from Fortune 500 companies that are looking to move their businesses, their number one thing that they are concerned about is the quality of workforce. So we have to have tools for them of what is my recruitment platform going to be when they move here. So if Raytheon wants to grow another 1,000 jobs, how do we help them grow 1,000 jobs? If we want to attract a new company here that's going to add another 2,000 jobs, how do we get them a message that's different than other places of why Tucson's a place to be? Because if they have that message, then they're going to help amplify that message. And we're going to have greater impact because we have private dollars plus public dollars all telling the same story, amplifying that to get true impact, which is new residents in Tucson and new growth for our economy.
I mean, what I'm hearing is that it's not one or the other. So on this show we talk about how do we keep our young talent here. It's a good conversation to have out of the University of Arizona. We need to make Tucson the best possible place to keep people who are already here for 4 years here. But that's not at the exclusion of, through destination marketing, through the work of Visit Tucson, through the work of Madden Media and organizations like yourselves, also, opening the door to workforce who isn't here yet, who may come here through quality experiences. I have to just keep this. Maybe this is more for me. It's not just one solution to a complex challenge. It's all of these things and all of these parts coming together like a puzzle. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's absolutely fair. And just to take one little marker of the young residents in the universities is, of people that transition jobs, people coming out of the universities is only 1 in 25 people that transition jobs. So it's a 4% number of the people that actually, come out of university that make up a transitioning workforce. So it's great that they're here. It's one of the audiences we definitely should market towards, but it's a fraction of the overall needs of Tucson.
Wow. That's the first time I've heard that number. That's gold. Dan Jane, CEO of Madden Media, thank you for that. Jeff Burkhart, Louis Christensen, we joked, although it's not a joke anymore. We could literally go 2 hours, but we've gone an hour, and our hour is closing. Thank you guys for your time in studio. Thank you for talking destination marketing and workforce attraction with us. Let's do this again soon. This was fun. Again, Jeff, welcome. Glad you're here in Tucson. It's great to meet you. Tucson, come on back. That's the end of our conversation for this hour. When we come back, what if? Big ideas for Tucson. We'll get into it at 11. See you on the other side.